The morning I woke up, my left ring finger felt naked. I ran my thumb over the spot where my wedding band had sat for 47 years, and all I felt was a pale indentation, slightly paler than the rest of my weathered skin. My heart dropped into my stomach before my brain even fully caught up. I patted the pillow. Nothing. I threw back the covers, probably a little too violently for a woman my age, and scanned the tangled sheets like I might spot the glint of platinum caught in a fold. I got down on my hands and knees, my knees protesting with a familiar pop, and looked under the bed. Dust bunnies. A stray hairpin. No ring. I sat back on the carpet, my breath coming a little faster than it should. I remembered twisting it last night, the way I always did before sleep, that small comforting habit of feeling the cool metal rotate against my knuckle. It was there when I closed my eyes. And when I opened them, it was gone. Someone had been in my room while I slept. The thought made my skin crawl in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I called the front desk first. The girl who answered had a voice like warm honey, all sweetness and no substance. She asked me to check my bag, my bathroom, my nightstand drawer. She told me, in that gently condescending tone they reserve for old ladies, that these things often turn up in the most obvious places we overlook. I let her talk. I let her finish. Then I asked for the manager. What I got instead was a woman in her early 30s, sharp in a perfectly pressed navy suit, her dark hair pulled back, so tight it looked like it hurt. Her nameplate said Emily Sanders, Assistant Director of Housekeeping. She smiled at me with her teeth but not her eyes, and she stood in the doorway of my room like she was doing me a favor by being there. She listened to my story with her head tilted, the way you'd listen to a child explaining an imaginary friend. Mrs. Blakewood, she said, and she made sure to emphasize the Mrs. Like it was a diagnosis. I completely understand your distress. But I want to assure you that our housekeeping staff are among the most vetted and reliable in the city. We have never had a single substantiated theft complaint on this floor in the 3 years I've been in this role. Her eyes flicked down to my feet. I was wearing my old wool slippers from Target, the ones with the worn-down heel and a small coffee stain on the left toe. My flannel nightgown had cost me $12 on a clearance rack. My hair was a bird's nest of gray curls, and I hadn't bothered with my glasses, so my eyes were squinting a little. I knew exactly what she saw. An old woman on a fixed income, probably staying here because her granddaughter guilt her into it, maybe a little confused, maybe looking for someone to blame for her own carelessness. The only person who entered my room this morning, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, was your housekeeper. I want her name, and I want her phone number. Emily's smile tightened at the edges. Mrs. Blakewood, I'm afraid I can't give out personal information about our employees. That would be a violation of their privacy. If you wish to file a police report, I can provide you with our security footage for the relevant time period. But I have to warn you, our cameras only cover the hallways, not the interiors of guest rooms. And frankly, the police are unlikely to prioritize she paused, searching for a word that wouldn't get her sued, a single piece of jewelry with no clear proof of theft. She was daring me. She was daring me to make a fuss, to prove I was just another difficult senior citizen who didn't understand how the world worked. I saw it in the way her perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her clipboard. She had already decided I was nothing, that I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten her. I just looked at her, held her gaze for a long, uncomfortable moment, and then I said, "Thank you for your time, Miss Sanders. I'll handle it from here." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "So you're not filing a report?" "Not with the police," I said. "Not today." She gave me one last thin smile, wished me a pleasant rest of my stay, and walked away. I heard her heels click down the hallway, a brisk, self-satisfied rhythm that said she'd handled the crazy old bat and could get back to her real work. I closed the door. I locked it. Then I went in my suitcase and pulled out my old laptop. It was a clunky thing, a decade old, with a cracked corner on the screen and a battery that lasted about 45 minutes unplugged. I set it on the desk, plugged it in, and waited through the painfully slow boot-up sequence. The fan whirred like an exhausted bee. Finally, the home screen appeared. I opened my browser and typed in a URL, I hadn't visited in almost 2 years. The website was plain, almost intentionally boring. No flashy graphics, no cheerful stock photos of smiling families. Just a white background, a login field, and a small logo in the corner that most people wouldn't even recognize. I enter my username, a string of letters and numbers that had no connection to my real name. The next page asked for my password. I typed that in too, then came the third layer. A box appeared on the screen, blinking patiently, waiting for a 6-digit code. The text underneath read, "Please enter your physical token dynamic verification code." My physical token. My ring. The one I'd had custom-made with Harry all those years ago. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. The inside of the band was engraved with a sequence of tiny numbers and letters, almost invisible to the naked eye. And there was a mechanism built into the metal, a nearly seamless joint that could rotate a fraction of a millimeter. You had to line up the engraving with a tiny marker on the inside of the band to generate a one-time code. Harry had loved the idea. He'd called it our little spy game. I'd thought it was silly at the time, but I'd gone along with it because it made him happy. Now Harry had been gone for 8 years, and that ring was the only key to a sum of money that would make Emily Sanders choke on her next sip of overpriced hotel coffee. Every month, the interest alone was enough to buy a house. But I never touched it. I let it sit, growing quietly because I didn't need it. I lived modestly. I drove a 10-year-old sedan. I clipped coupons and bought store-brand cereal. It was the life I wanted, the life Harry and I had built together, humble and honest and free of all the complications that came with flashing money around. But that ring wasn't just a key. It was Harry's last gift to me. And someone had taken it off my finger while I was unconscious and vulnerable in a hotel bed. I stared at that blinking box on my screen, watching the timer tick down from 60 seconds. 59. 58. 57. Did I close the laptop? The screen went dark. I reached for the room phone and dialed a number I'd memorized years ago, a number I'd sworn I would only call if the world was ending. It rang twice. A man's voice answered, low and rough, with no greeting. Just, "Yeah. It's me," I said. "Marion Blakewood." There was a pause. Then his voice shifted, the casual edge gone, replaced by something almost reverent. "Mrs. Blakewood, it's been a long time. What can I do for you? I need you to find someone for me. A housekeeper at the downtown Hilton. Her name is Maria. She worked the early shift today. I want to know where she went when she left, what she did, who she talked to, and exactly what she bought with the cash she just came into." Another pause. "You want a full profile? I want her whole life on a page. And I want it by this afternoon." And then I looked out the window at the city skyline, glittering and indifferent. I could see the street below, the traffic, the people scurrying about their lives. And there, parked at the curb on the opposite side, gleaming red under the morning sun, was a brand new sedan. It had a white dealership bow tied to the roof. Standing next to it, phone in hand, taking a selfie, was a woman in a hotel housekeeping uniform that she was laughing. She was absolutely radiant. She was probably texting her family, sending them pictures of her shiny new toy, already planning how she was going to drive it home and show it off to everyone who'd ever doubted her. "Then," I said, watching her spin in a little circle of pure, unguarded joy, "I want you to buy her employer. The hotel she works at. The one she just left. I want a letter of intent on my desk tomorrow morning. I don't care what it costs." The man on the other end was quiet for a moment, but I could hear the faint clicking of a keyboard. "That's a Hilton property. It's not a small purchase." I didn't ask if it was small. I asked if you could do it. "I can do it, Mrs. Blakewood. But are you sure about this?" I watched Maria slide into the driver's seat of her new car, turning the steering wheel like it was made of gold. She adjusted the mirror, ran a hand over the dashboard, and sat there for a moment, just breathing in that new car smell. She probably thought she'd gotten away with it. She probably thought I was just some forgetful old lady who'd lose her ring and never think twice about it. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. "That ring is the only thing I have left of my husband. She didn't just steal jewelry. She stole the last piece of my history with him." And she's about to find out that some old ladies have a lot more teeth than she bargained for. I put down the phone and walked back to the window. Maria was pulling out into traffic, merging with a confident little wave to the car behind her, her new car gleaming in the sunlight. I watched her go, watched the red taillights shrink and disappear around a corner. Then I picked up the phone again and dialed my daughter's number. Judy answered on the third ring, breathless and harried as always. "Mom, is everything okay? The kids are screaming and I'm trying to make lunch and…" "Judy," I said, and I used the voice. The one I hadn't used since she was 16, and she'd tried to sneak out of the house to go to a party. The voice that could cut glass and pin a person to the wall without ever rising above a whisper. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." The noise on her end dropped a little. "Mom, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Nothing to be scared of, sweetheart. But I want you to call your husband. Tell him to clear his calendar tomorrow morning. I have a meeting at a hotel downtown and I want him there. Specifically, I want him in the lobby, waiting for me. You want Dennis to come to a meeting with you, Mom. He's a real estate agent. He deals with million-dollar listings. He's not going to just drop everything he's going to drop everything," I said, "because I'm going to be buying a piece of real estate tomorrow, and I want him to be the agent of record. Tell him to bring his best suit and his most professional smile. He's going to be representing his mother-in-law in a very large transaction." There was a long, loaded silence. I could practically hear Judy's brain working, trying to reconcile the image of her coupon clipping, living on Social Security mother with the words I was saying.
"Mom,
"What are you talking about? What real estate? You can't afford to buy anything. You barely made your property tax payment last year. I had to lend you. I paid you back. I cut in, with interest 3 days later. Remember? And you never asked me where that money came from. Because deep down, honey, you've always known I had something put away. You just didn't want to ask." Judy's voice dropped low, almost conspiratorial.
Mom,
"What did you do? Did you win the lottery and not tell us? Did Dad have a secret pension you never mentioned? Your father and I said slowly, "we're very careful people. He built a business, and I helped him run it. We sold it for a lot more than anybody ever knew. And I never needed to touch that money because the life we built together was enough. But someone took something from me this morning that can't be replaced. And so now I'm going to spend some of that money. I'm going to spend a lot of it. And that's why I need Dennis." Judy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in a voice I hadn't heard since she was a little girl, scared of the dark, "Mom, are you okay? I mean, really okay?" "I'm better than okay," I said, watching the last trace of Maria's red car vanish in the distance. "I'm just getting started." The rest of that day moved like molasses, thick and slow, with every minute stretching out longer than it should have. I stayed in my hotel room, mostly because I didn't trust myself to leave. I ordered room service, a club sandwich, and a pot of tea that came on a tray with a little silver lid over the plate. The boy who brought it looked about 16, with acne on his chin and a voice that cracked when he said, "Enjoy your meal." He was polite enough, but I saw him glance at my suitcase, at my worn-down slippers, at the pile of travel brochures I'd picked up in the lobby the day before. He was sizing me up the same way Emily had. Just another old woman stretching her pension check. I tipped him $3, which was probably more than he expected, and he thanked me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I wondered what he would have said if I'd handed him a $100 bill and told him to keep the change. He'd probably have thought I was senile. I'd gotten used to that over the years. There was a certain freedom in being underestimated, in watching people's faces shift from polite disinterest to grudging respect to outright shock. It had become something of a hobby in my quiet way. But today, I was done being quiet. My phone buzzed around 2 in the afternoon. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. I answered without a greeting. "She bought a car." The voice on the other end said,
"No preamble."
No small talk. Just the facts. A red 2025 Honda Civic. Paid cash. Walked out of the dealership at 9:47 this morning, drove straight to her sister's house, stayed for about an hour, then went to a nail salon. She's currently at a diner called Rosie's, about 4 blocks from the hotel, having lunch with a friend. She's been showing off the keys the whole time. "Did she make any other purchases?" I asked. "Nothing major." a new phone case, some groceries. But here's the interesting part. She made a deposit at a bank branch near her apartment, about an hour after she left the hotel. Cash deposit, $800. That's on top of the car, which I'm estimating cost her somewhere around 30 grand. She's a housekeeper making $18 an hour. Her rent is $1,200 a month. She doesn't have a husband, doesn't have any other income sources. The math doesn't work. Unless she came into a sudden windfall. Or she found a piece of platinum with a very clever hidden mechanism, I said. And she has no idea what it actually does. She just saw a ring she thought she could pawn. That's my read too. She probably took it to a pawn shop or a jeweler, got an offer, and decided it was worth more than she expected. But she didn't sell it. She's holding on to it. How do you know? Because I had someone watch her. She's wearing it, Mrs. Blakewood. Right there on her finger. She's showing it off to her friend at the diner right now. Looks like she thinks it's a trophy. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something older and deeper. Something that had been dormant for a long time, but was now waking up and stretching its legs. She was wearing my ring. My Harry's ring. The ring I'd held at his funeral. The ring I'd promised to keep safe until the day they carried me out in a box. And she was wearing it like a trinket, showing it off in a greasy spoon diner, probably telling her friend it was a gift from a rich old lady who didn't know what she had. Keep watching her, I said. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, everything she eats for breakfast. I want to know the name of her favorite brand of toothpaste. I don't want a single detail to slip through the cracks. Understood. And the other thing, the hotel acquisition. Yeah, I've got a team working on it already. The property's owned by a holding company based out of Delaware. They've been looking to divest some of their mid-tier assets for the last 6 months. We've got a good shot at getting a deal done by the end of the week if you're serious. I'm serious, I said. Whatever it takes. I don't care if I have to pay 20% above market. I want that building. The voice on the other end didn't question me. That was one of the things I'd always appreciated about him. He'd worked for Harry and me for 30 years, back when we were running the business that nobody knew about, the one that operated out of a tiny office in a strip mall and made more money in a quarter than most companies made in a decade. He knew not to ask questions. He just got the job done. I'll have the paperwork ready for signature by tomorrow morning, he said. And, Mrs. Blakewood, for what it's worth, I think this is the most interesting thing you've done since you retired. I missed working for you. Don't get sentimental on me, Charles, I said, but I was smiling. Just make sure the deal goes through. I've got a housekeeper to fire and a daughter's husband to impress. Busy day tomorrow. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. The room was nice enough, beige and bland, with one of those abstract paintings that looked like someone had sneezed onto a canvas. I'd booked it because it was close to my granddaughter's apartment, and I'd wanted to surprise her with a visit. I hadn't told her I was coming because I knew she was busy with her new job and her new boyfriend and her new life, and I didn't want to be in the way. That was the story of my life, really. Always trying not to be in the way. But this morning, someone had walked into my room and taken something from me while I slept, and suddenly, I didn't care about being in the way anymore. I wanted to be right in the middle of everything. I wanted to be the thing that people couldn't ignore. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Judy. Mom, she said, and her voice sounded funny, like she'd been crying or was about to start. I talked to Dennis. He's coming. He's going to meet you tomorrow. But he wants to know what this is about. He told me he can't just show up to a meeting without knowing the details. He said he has clients who depend on him, and he can't drop them for some kind of, I don't know, family drama. Drama, I repeated. He called it drama. He didn't say it exactly like that. He said, he needs to prioritize his professional commitments. I'm just paraphrasing. He called it drama, Judy. I know my son-in-law. He's been calling me drama since the first time I told him he was overcharging that young couple for the starter home on Maple Street. He doesn't like me. He thinks I'm a liability. He thinks I'm the one who's going to cost him his reputation. Judy was quiet for a second. Then she said, Mom, to be fair, you did tell him he was overcharging them right in front of the buyers, in the middle of an open house. Because he was overcharging them. They were young, Judy. They were first-time buyers. They didn't know that house had a leaky roof and a furnace that was about to die. I was looking out for them. Mom, you looked out for them by tanking my husband's sale. He lost that commission. He didn't talk to me for a week. Then he should have charged a fair price, I said. And he should have been honest about the condition of the property. That's what your father and I always did. We built a business on honesty. That's why it succeeded. Judy sighed. I know you have principles, Mom. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm just saying that Dennis is going to be walking into a room tomorrow completely blind, and he's already defensive about you. Can you maybe just tell me what's going on so I can prepare him? I thought about it. I could have told her. I could have explained the whole thing, the ring, the housekeeper, the offshore account, the hotel acquisition. But that would have required her to believe me, and I wasn't sure she was ready for that. She'd spent the last 20 years thinking of me as her slightly odd, slightly poor, slightly difficult mother who lived in a small house and drove a cheap car and never had anything exciting to say. I'd cultivated that image on purpose. It kept things simple. It kept people from looking too closely. But tomorrow, the image was going to shatter. And I wanted to see the look on Dennis's face when it did. I'll tell him tomorrow, I said. Just tell him to be there at 9 o'clock sharp. And tell him to bring his reading glasses, because there's going to be a lot of paperwork. I hung up and walked to the window. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I could see the diner from here, the one where Maria was probably still sitting, laughing with her friend, showing off my ring. I imagined her hands, wrapped around a coffee cup, the platinum band glinting under the fluorescent lights. She didn't know what she had. She didn't know that the ring she was wearing could unlock a fortune. She just thought it was pretty. But she was going to find out. And so was Dennis. And so was Emily Sanders, with her tight smile and her perfect suit, who'd looked at me like I was nothing. They were all going to find out that the old woman in the Target slippers wasn't just an old woman, that I sat back down on the bed and pulled out my laptop. I opened my email and started typing a message to the general manager of the hotel. I kept it short and professional, just a few lines. I told him that I was a guest at his establishment, that I had a concern I'd like to discuss with him personally, and that I would be in the lobby at 8:30 the following morning. I didn't mention the ring. I didn't mention the theft. I didn't mention that by the time we spoke, I would technically be his boss. I hit send and closed the laptop. Then I took off my glasses and rubbed my eyes. I was tired. It had been a long day, full of things I hadn't expected, but I also felt more awake than I had in years. There was a purpose to my days again, a reason to get up in the morning. It wasn't just about the ring. It was about proving something. Not to Maria, not to Dennis, not to Emily Sanders. To myself. To the part of me that had retired and gotten soft and let people walk all over me because I couldn't be bothered to stand up. I was standing up now. And I wasn't going to sit back down. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. I showered, put on my best dress, a navy blue thing with white polka dots that I'd bought at a consignment shop 3 years ago. It was comfortable and practical, and made me look like the kind of grandmother who baked cookies and gardened and had no idea what a stock portfolio was. That was the point. I wanted them to see what they expected to see. I wanted them to be comfortable in their assumptions. I put on my sensible black flats and a little bit of lipstick. I combed my gray hair and clipped it back. I looked in the mirror and saw a 75-year-old woman who was about to change some people's lives. For better or worse, that was still to be determined. I walked down to the lobby at exactly 8:20. Emily Sanders was at the front desk, talking to one of the bellboys. She saw me coming and gave me that tight, practiced smile. She probably remembered me. She probably thought I was coming down to complain again, to demand my ring back, to make more trouble that she'd have to smooth over. Her shoulders tensed just slightly as I approached. "Good morning, Mrs. Blakewood," she said. "Is there something I can help you with?" "As a matter of fact, there is," I said. "I'm waiting for someone. But I'd appreciate it if you'd call the general manager and let him know I'm here. I sent him an email last night." Emily's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "The general manager, Mr. Henderson, he's in a meeting right now, I'm afraid." "Perhaps I could. You could tell him I'm here," I said, and I kept my voice cheerful and pleasant, like we were discussing the weather. He'll want to see me. Trust me. She hesitated. She was trying to figure out if I was a threat or just a nuisance. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. In the end, she decided I was probably a nuisance, but she called up to Mr. Henderson's office anyway, probably just to cover her bases. She spoke in a low murmur, and I couldn't hear what was said on the other end. But I saw her face change. Her eyes widened a little. She put the phone down and looked at me with a completely different expression. Mr. Henderson will be right down, she said. He says he's been expecting you. I smiled. Thank you, dear. That's very kind. I sat down in one of the lobby chairs, a plush thing with gold trim that was probably more for show than comfort. I crossed my legs and folded my hands in my lap. I could feel Emily's eyes on me, trying to figure out what I was. I could see the bellboys whispering, the front desk clerks stealing glances. I was the strange old woman in the polka dress, the one who'd raised a fuss about a missing ring and then disappeared for the rest of the day. Now I was back, and I had an appointment with the general manager. At exactly 8:30, the elevator doors opened, and Dennis walked out. He was wearing his best suit, a charcoal gray thing with a red tie. His hair was freshly cut, and his shoes were shined. He looked like a man who'd spent an hour getting ready and was still trying to figure out what he was doing here. He spotted me in the chair and walked over, his professional smile firmly in place. Marion, he said, and he used my first name, which he'd always done, because he thought it made him sound more approachable. Judy said you wanted to see me. I have to tell you, I wasn't sure what to expect. She wouldn't give me any details. That's because I didn't give her any, I said. I wanted to tell you in person. Please sit down. He sat in the chair next to me, still smiling, but I could see the confusion underneath. He was a man who liked to be in control, who liked to have all the facts. And he had none. He didn't like that at all. Everything okay, he asked. You look different. I don't know. More energetic or something. I feel different, I admitted. I had a bit of a rough day yesterday. Someone stole something from me, and I decided I wasn't going to let it slide. His eyebrows shot up. Stole something? Did you report it? Do you need a lawyer? I know a guy who does elder law. He's really good. I don't need a lawyer, I said. I need a real estate agent. Specifically, I need you. I've got a property I want to buy, and I need someone to handle the paperwork. Dennis blinked. A property? What kind of property? You're not. You don't have the money for a property. No offense, Marion, but you live on a fixed income. Buying a property would be a huge financial strain on you. I don't think I can in good conscience let you. Dennis, I said, and I held up a hand to stop him. I've been letting people underestimate me for a long time. My husband and I built a company together. We sold it. I put every dime into a trust. I've been living off a fraction of what I have. The rest has just been sitting there, growing. And today, I'm going to start spending it. Dennis stared at me. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. How much? He finally managed. Enough, I said. Enough to buy this hotel. Which is exactly what I'm doing this morning. I gestured toward the grand lobby, the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers. I'm buying it. And I want you to be the agent on the deal. Dennis's face went pale. He looked at me like I'd just announced I was running for president. You're buying the Hilton Marion. This hotel is worth millions. Tens of millions. You can't just. I can, I said. And I am. And I want you to be the one to make it happen. At that moment, the elevator opened again, and Mr. Henderson, the general manager, walked out. He was a tall man in his 50s, with a worried expression on his face. He spotted me and walked over, his hand extended. Mrs. Blakewood, he said, and his voice was a little too high, a little too nervous. I got your email, and I just got a call from our corporate office. There's been some kind of development. I don't really understand what's happening. They said something about a change in ownership. I shook his hand and smiled. Yes, Mr. Henderson. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. This is my son-in-law, Dennis. He's going to be handling the legal side of things. I trust you'll cooperate with him fully. Mr. Henderson's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. You're the one, the buyer, but the paperwork only came through this morning. I didn't even know the deal was happening until an hour ago. The deal happened very quickly, I said. That tends to happen when you have the right people on your side. Now, I understand there's a housekeeper who works here named Maria. Do you know her? Mr. Henderson blinked. Maria, yes. She's one of our cleaning staff. Has been for years. Why do you ask? Because she's the one who stole my wedding ring yesterday, I said. And she's wearing it right now, probably driving around in her new car, thinking she got away with it. I want her fired. And I want her to know that it came from me. Mr. Henderson looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Mrs. Blakewood, I don't have the authority to. You do now, I said calmly. You answer to me. And I'm telling you, fire her.
Today.
And while you're at it, tell her to return the ring. Or she'll be hearing from my lawyers. Dennis was still sitting in his chair, staring at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. His professional smile had completely vanished. He looked like a man who'd just discovered that the quiet old lady he'd been patronizing for years was actually a billionaire. His mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. Well, Dennis, I said, patting his hand. I told you to bring your reading glasses. There's going to be a lot of paperwork. The next hour was a blur of handshakes and signatures and phone calls that I mostly let Dennis handle. He was a different man than the one who'd walked through those lobby doors. The confident, slightly condescending real estate agent who'd always treated me like a charity case had vanished, replaced by something I'd never seen on his face before. Uncertainty. Maybe even a little awe. He kept glancing at me sideways, like he was waiting for the punchline, like at any moment I'd burst out laughing and tell him it was all a joke. But the papers kept coming. Charles had sent over a team of lawyers, sharp young men and women in expensive suits who treated me with a kind of deference I hadn't felt since Harry was alive. They pulled out documents, explained clauses, pointed where I needed to sign. They didn't question my decisions. They didn't ask if I was sure. They just laid everything out and waited for my nod. I signed my name on page after page. Marion Blakewood. The letters looked strange on the paper, too formal somehow, like I was signing someone else's life away. But every time my pen touched the page, I felt a little bit more of myself coming back. The part of me that had run a business with Harry, the part that had negotiated deals and made decisions that affected dozens of families. I'd buried that woman deep, thinking she didn't belong in my quiet retirement. But she'd been waiting all along, just under the surface, ready to come back the moment I needed her. Dennis was on the phone with his office, his voice hushed and urgent. No, I'm telling you it's real. She's buying the whole building. The Hilton downtown. I'm the agent on the deal. Yes, I know it sounds insane. Just get the paperwork ready on your end. I'll explain everything when I get back. He hung up and ran a hand through his hair, leaving it sticking up in odd directions. Marion, he said, and his voice cracked a little on my name. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to even think. All these years, I thought you were living on Social Security. I thought you were struggling. I lent you money for your property taxes. I gave you advice about selling your house because I thought you needed the cash. And you just sat there and let me. I appreciated the advice, I said. And I appreciated the loan. I paid it back, didn't I? You paid it back with interest. I thought you'd won a small lottery or something.
I didn't ask.
I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know. I didn't want you to know, I said. I didn't want anyone to know. Harry and I built that business in secret. It started as a joke, really. A little side project that grew into something much bigger than we ever expected. We were both terrified of money changing who we were. So, we decided to keep it quiet. We lived the same lives, drove the same cars, shopped at the same grocery stores. The only thing that changed was that we didn't have to worry anymore. We could just relax. Enjoy each other. Dennis shook his head slowly. And you've been sitting on all that money for 8 years since he died, and you never told anyone. What would I have told them? That I was secretly a millionaire, that I'd been lying about my life for decades? I didn't want that. I just wanted to be a normal old lady. And I was happy that way.
Then why now? He asked.
Why today? Why this hotel? What changed? I looked down at my bare left hand. The indent where my ring used to be was already fading, just a faint shadow of what it had been. In a few more days, it would be gone completely, and no one would ever know anything was missing. But I would know. I would always know. Someone took something from me while I was asleep, I said. And when I tried to get it back, I was treated like a crazy old woman.
Told to check my bag.
Told maybe I'd just misplaced it. They looked at me and saw someone who didn't matter. And I realized at that moment that I'd been hiding for way too long. It was time to stop being invisible. It was time for people to see what I was really made of. Dennis was quiet for a long moment. He looked at me with something that might have been respect, or maybe just the dawning realization that he'd been wrong about me for years. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry I never asked.
I'm sorry jag summed.
I'm sorry for all those times I made jokes about you being on a budget. I didn't know." "No one knew," I said. That was the point. But now everyone is going to know. Starting with the woman who took my ring. Right on cue, Mr. Henderson walked over, looking like he'd just swallowed a bug. His face was pale, and he was holding his phone in a death grip. "Mrs. Blakewood," he said, and his voice trembled slightly. "I just spoke with Maria.
She's on her way in."
She doesn't know what's happening, but I told her there was a situation with a guest complaint that needed to be addressed in person. She'll be here in about 20 minutes.
"Good," I said.
"I'd like you to be there when she arrives. I'd like everyone to be there, actually. Emily Sanders, the assistant director of housekeeping. The front desk staff. Anyone who was involved in telling me I was wrong about what happened. I want them all to see this." Mr. Henderson nodded quickly, too quickly, like a man who'd do anything to avoid being on my bad side. "I'll make sure they're all in the conference room. Whatever you need." He hurried off to make the arrangements, and Dennis watched him go with a dazed expression. "You've got them all terrified," he said. "They think you're going to fire everyone." "Maybe I will," I said. "Maybe I won't. That depends entirely on how they treat me when they find out who I actually am. And it depends on whether I get my ring back." There was something I hadn't told Dennis yet, something I hadn't told anyone except Charles. The ring wasn't just sentimental. It was functional. It was the key to everything. But telling that to Dennis would have opened up another whole can of worms, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Not until I had the ring back in my hand where it belonged. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the hotel's main conference room, a large space with a long mahogany table and leather chairs that creaked when you shifted your weight. Dennis was on my left, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Mr. Henderson was at the head of the table, fidgeting with his tie. Emily Sanders was standing near the door, her arms crossed, her face a careful mask of professionalism that couldn't quite hide her confusion. She didn't know what was happening yet. I'd asked Mr. Henderson to keep it vague. The door opened, and Maria walked in. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and a round, pleasant face that probably smiled a lot. She was wearing her housekeeping uniform, a crisp gray dress with a Hilton name tag pinned over her heart. She looked confused, like she'd been summoned for something she didn't understand. Her hands were empty. "I couldn't see the ring, Maria," Mr. Henderson said, and his voice was strained. "Please have a seat. There's someone here who wants to talk to you." Maria's eyes scanned the room, landing on me. There was a flicker of recognition, then a flash of something else. Fear, maybe, or guilt. It was there and gone in a second, replaced by a polite, blank smile. "Of course," she said. "Hello. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. I'm one of the housekeepers. If there's a problem with your room, I can—" "There's no problem with my room," I said. "The problem is with my ring. The platinum band that was on my nightstand when I went to sleep. The one that was gone when I woke up." Maria's smile didn't waver, but something in her eyes shifted.
Hardened.
"I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see any ring. I've worked here for 7 years, and I've never taken anything from a guest. You can check my record. You can talk to my manager. I'm very well respected around here." "I'm sure you are," I said. "I'm sure you've been very careful. 7 years of taking nothing. And then you saw an old woman sleeping alone in a hotel room, and you saw a piece of platinum sitting on the nightstand, and you made a decision. You thought I'd wake up and just assume I'd lost it. You thought I'd be too old and confused to do anything about it." Maria's jaw tightened. She glanced at Mr. Henderson, then at Emily, looking for backup. Emily stayed silent, her face unreadable. Mr. Henderson was staring at his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. Maria was on her own, and she knew it. "I'm going to ask you one time," I said, keeping my voice low and even, "and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Where is my ring?" Maria's face flushed. "I told you, I don't know anything about any ring. I've never even seen it. And I don't appreciate being accused of stealing. I think I should go. I think you should talk to someone else. Maybe you lost it somewhere else, and you just don't remember." She started to get up, but Dennis put a hand on her arm. "I think you should stay," he said, and his voice was surprisingly firm. "We're not finished yet." Maria stared at him, then back at me. Her expression shifted from defensive to defiant. "You can't force me to stay here. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm leaving." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said. "Because if you walk out that door, I'm going to call the police. And I'm going to press charges. And I'm going to make sure that every news outlet in the city knows that a Hilton housekeeper stole from an elderly guest. You won't just lose your job. You won't just lose your reputation. You'll lose everything. Your new car. Your apartment. Your peace of mind. I can make that happen. I've got the money and the time to make it happen." Maria froze. Her defiant expression cracked, just a little. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said again, but her voice was thinner now, less confident. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "You went to a dealership yesterday morning and bought a car. Paid cash. A red Honda Civic. You're wearing the same shoes you were wearing when you bought it. I can see the little scuff mark on the left heel. You drove it straight to your sister's house, then to a nail salon, then to a diner called Rosie's. You had lunch with a friend. You showed her the ring." Maria's face went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked around the room, searching for an ally, but everyone was looking at her with cold, judgmental eyes. Even Emily, who defended her so fiercely the day before, was staring at her like she'd never met her before. "Where's my ring, Maria?" I asked again. "Tell me now, and I might be lenient. Keep lying, and I will destroy you. Not because I'm cruel, but because you took something that doesn't belong to you, and you did it while I was sleeping in a room I paid for. You violated my privacy. You took the last gift my husband ever gave me. And I'm not going to let that slide." Maria's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of her, leaving behind something that looked like exhaustion. Or defeat. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch, the kind of thing a jewelry store would give you. She held it out to me with trembling hands. "It's in here," she said, and her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't sell it. I was going to, but I saw it, and it was so pretty, and I thought maybe I could wear it for a few days before I found a buyer. I didn't think anyone would notice. I didn't think it was important."
"I'm sorry."
"I'm so sorry." I took the pouch from her hand. It was warm from her body heat, which made me feel a little sick. I opened the drawstring and tipped the ring out into my palm. It looked just the same as it always had, a simple platinum band with a faint engraving on the inside. Untarnished. Unbroken. It was the only thing Harry had left me that truly mattered, and now it was back in my hands where it belonged, and I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had never left. I didn't even have to twist it. It was home. "Thank you for returning it," I said to Maria. "That was the right decision. Unfortunately, I still have to fire you." Maria nodded, tears starting to well in her eyes. "I understand," she said. "I deserve it. I wasn't thinking. I saw it and I wanted it, and I didn't think about the person who owned it. I thought she was just some old lady. I didn't think she'd fight back." "She's not just some old lady," Dennis said, and there was a note of pride in his voice that I hadn't heard from him before. "She's the old lady who just bought this hotel. She's your boss now. And you stole from her. That's not just a crime. That's a career-ending mistake." Maria's eyes widened. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You bought the hotel yesterday," I said. "The paperwork went through this morning. I didn't do it to get back at you, Maria. I did it because I wanted to make a point. I wanted people to know that you don't mess with old women. We're not invisible. We're not harmless. We're just quiet until we decide not to be. I stood up, slipping the ring onto my left hand where it belonged. It felt heavier than it had before, weighted with something more than just metal. It was the weight of everything I'd been hiding, finally coming to the surface. I want you out of this building in 30 minutes, I said. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. If I ever see you on any property I own again, I will have you arrested. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Maria nodded, tears streaming down her face. She got up and walked out of the conference room with her head down, shoulders shaking. No one said a word. No one followed her. I turned to Mr. Henderson. I want a full audit of this hotel's security procedures, I said. And I want a meeting with every department head tomorrow morning. We're going to change the way this place operates, starting with how you treat your guests. Starting with how you treat elderly women who are paying for a room and deserve to sleep without being robbed. Mr. Henderson nodded vigorously. Of course, Mrs. Blakewood. Whatever you want. It will be done. Emily Sanders stepped forward, her face pale. Mrs. Blakewood, she said, I want to apologize.
For yesterday.
I was dismissive. I was wrong. I should have taken you more seriously. I should have taken your claims seriously. I was arrogant and I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. She was young, ambitious, probably good at her job most of the time. But she'd made a mistake. She'd looked at me and seen a stereotype, and she'd acted accordingly. That was a lesson she needed to learn. Your apology is accepted, I said. But I want you to promise me something. I want you to promise that from now on, you'll treat every guest the same way, no matter how they look, no matter how they're dressed, no matter how old they are. Because you never know who you're dealing with. And someday, you might be the one standing in my shoes, trying to convince someone to believe you. Emily nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I promise, she said. I'll do better. I'll be better. I walked out of the conference room, Dennis following close behind. The staff in the lobby parted like the Red Sea as I passed, all of them staring at me with wide eyes. They'd heard what happened. They knew who I was now. The cat was out of the bag, and there was no putting it back. Dennis caught up to me at the elevator. Marion, he said, I don't know what to say. I've known you for 20 years, and I never knew you were capable of this.
I'm impressed.
Honestly, you've got guts. I've got more than guts, I said, stepping into the elevator. I've got a ring, and I've got a hotel, and I'm just getting started. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the hotel, in the same room where it had all started, but this time I wasn't just a guest. I was the owner. The room felt different somehow, even though nothing had changed. The same beige walls, the same abstract painting, the same view of the city skyline. But now I looked out that window and saw something I hadn't seen before. Possibility. Power. The strange, unfamiliar sensation of being seen. Word had spread fast. By the time I went down to the lobby for dinner, every staff member I passed looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. The bellboy who'd brought my sandwich the day before practically tripped over himself to open the door for me. The front desk clerk who'd taken my complaint about the ring and done nothing about it apologized to me 3 times in the span of 30 seconds. I didn't enjoy their fear. I wasn't that kind of person, but I couldn't deny that being taken seriously was a very pleasant change. Dennis had gone home to tell Judy the news. I knew she'd be calling me soon, probably with a million questions. I'd already turned my phone to silent because I needed a moment to breathe before I had to explain everything to my daughter. She wasn't going to take it well. She'd been lied to, in a way, for her entire adult life. She'd thought her mother was just a regular retired woman with a small house and a tight budget and no real ambitions. Finding out I was wealthy was going to be a shock. Finding out I'd hidden it from her was going to hurt. I sat in the hotel restaurant, a fancy place with white tablecloths and candles in little glass holders, and ordered a glass of wine I'd never been able to afford before. It was good, better than the stuff I usually bought at the grocery store, but I couldn't really enjoy it. My mind was too full, too busy reeling from everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. My phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Finally, I picked it up and saw that it was Judy. I let it ring and go to voicemail. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. So I finished my wine, paid the bill, and walked back up to my room. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and there, sitting on the edge of my bed, was my daughter. She let herself in with a spare key she'd gotten from the front desk. I should have been angry, but I wasn't. I was just tired. And maybe a little relieved. Because she was here and that meant she cared, even if she was furious with me. "Mom," she said, and her voice was tight, controlled, the kind of tone she used when she was trying not to scream. "I've been calling you for 2 hours. What the hell is going on?" I closed the door behind me and sat down in the armchair across from the bed. "Hello to you too," I said. "How did you get in?" The front desk gave me a key. They said you were the owner now, and I could have anything I wanted. That was weird enough. But then Dennis came home and told me you bought a hotel.
A whole hotel, Mom.
He said you fired a housekeeper and threatened to destroy her life and made a bunch of managers cry. He said you're a secret billionaire and you've been lying to me for years. "I haven't been lying to you," I said. "I've been keeping a secret. There's a difference." "Mom." Her voice cracked. "You let me think you were struggling. You let me worry about you. I sent you money. I told you to sell your house. I offered to have you move in with us because I was scared you couldn't afford to live on your own. And all along, you could have bought my whole neighborhood with your spare change." I didn't have a good answer for that. She was right. I had let her worry. I had let her send me money and give me advice and treat me like a fragile old woman who needed protecting. And it had felt good, in a way, to be taken care of, to be loved and worried over. But I'd also been dishonest. I'd let her believe a fiction because it was easier than the truth. "Judy," I said, "I never wanted you to know. I wanted to live a simple life. I wanted to be just like everyone else. Harry and I worked very hard to build that business, and when it was done, we didn't want it to change us. We didn't want people treating us differently because we had money. We didn't want our friends and family to see us differently. We wanted to be the same people we'd always been." "But you weren't the same people," she said. "You were rich. You were millionaires.
And you didn't tell me.
You didn't trust me." "It wasn't about trust," I said. "It was about protecting you. And protecting myself. I've seen what money does to families. I've seen people fight over inheritances, tear each other apart over nothing. I didn't want that. I wanted you to have a normal life, without the shadow of all that money hanging over you." Judy stood up and started pacing the room, her hands clenched at her sides. "I'm not going to fight you over your money," she said. "I don't want your money. I want you. I want the real you. Not this act you've been putting on for 20 years. Do you have any idea how hurtful that is? Do you have any idea how it feels to find out your mother is a stranger? That hit me harder than I expected. I'd thought about this moment 1,000 times, imagined all the ways it could go, but I hadn't thought about that word. Stranger. She thought I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Maybe the Marion Blakewood who'd clipped coupons and worn Target slippers and worried about her property taxes had been a character I'd played for so long that I'd forgotten how to be anyone else. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I let you worry. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just protecting myself. I was scared of what would happen if people found out who I really was." Judy stopped pacing and looked at me. Her eyes were red, and there were tear tracks on her cheeks.
"Who are you?" she asked.
"Who are you really?" I thought about that question for a long moment. Who was I? Really, I was Marion Blakewood, the woman who'd built a company with her husband and then walked away from it to live a quiet life. I was a woman who'd been robbed and then bought the hotel where it happened. I was a woman who'd been underestimated her whole life and had finally decided to stop letting people walk all over her. "I'm your mother," I said. "I'm the woman who loved your father for 47 years. I'm the woman who taught you how to ride a bike and helped you with your homework and cried at your wedding. I'm the same person I've always been. I just have more money than you thought. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you. But I'm not sorry about the life I've lived. It was a good life. A happy life. And I wouldn't trade any of it, even the secrets." Judy stared at me for a long moment. Then she sat down on the bed and buried her face in her hands. "I don't know what to do with this," she said. I don't know how to feel. I'm so angry at you, but I also feel like I'm being ungrateful. You didn't do anything wrong. You just kept a secret. It's your money.
You can do whatever you want with it.
But I still feel like I've been punched in the stomach. I moved to sit next to her on the bed, putting a hand on her shoulder. I know, I said. And you have every right to be angry. I would be angry too. I'll spend as long as it takes earning your trust back. I'll tell you everything. Every detail. No more secrets. I promise. She looked up at me, her face blotchy and tear-stained. Promise, I said. I'm done hiding. I've been hiding for 20 years, and I'm exhausted. I want to live my life out in the open. I want to buy stupid things and take trips and spoil my grandchildren rotten. And I want you to be there for all of it if you'll have me. Judy let out a shaky breath. I love you, Mom, even if you are a crazy secret billionaire. I love you too, sweetheart, I said, even if you're a drama queen. She laughed, a wet, sobbing laugh, and I wrapped my arms around her. She held on tight, like she was afraid I'd disappear. I didn't blame her. I'd been disappearing for years. The next morning, I woke up with my ring securely on my finger and a new sense of purpose. I had a hotel to run, a reputation to rebuild, and a family to reconnect with. It was a lot to handle, but for the first time in a long time, I felt up to the challenge. I showered and dressed in something nicer than my usual consignment store finds. A simple black dress with a pearl necklace I'd inherited from my mother. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who looked like she belonged at the head of a boardroom table. It was a good look on me that I walked down to the lobby and found Dennis waiting for me, holding a large stack of papers. He was wearing his best suit again, and this time he looked like he actually belonged there. Good morning, Mrs. Blakewood, he said with a slight grin. Ready for another day of wheeling and dealing. I was born ready, I said. What's on the agenda? He handed me the top sheet of paper. I've got a list of all the department heads who want to meet with you. I've got a proposal for a new security system that the previous owners rejected because it was too expensive. I've got a dozen vendors who want to know if you're going to renew their contracts. And I've got a call from a local news station asking if you'd like to do an interview. I blinked. News station? They heard about the purchase. They're calling it the biggest real estate transaction in the city this year. They want to know who the mystery buyer is. I told them you weren't available, but they're persistent. I thought about it. I'd spent my whole life in the shadows, avoiding attention, keeping my head down. But that was the old me. The new me was ready to step into the light. Tell them I'll do it, I said. But not yet. I want to settle in first. I want to make some changes. And then I'll tell my story. On my terms. Dennis nodded, scribbling something on his notepad. You're really doing this, aren't you? You're not just going to buy the hotel and let it sit. You're going to run it. I'm going to do more than run it, I said. I'm going to make it the best hotel in the city. The kind of place where people come to feel safe and respected, no matter who they are. I'm going to change the culture. I'm going to make sure that no one ever feels like I felt the other day, dismissed and ignored and invisible. We walked into the conference room, and the department heads were already there, a row of nervous faces looking up at me like I was their judge and jury. I sat at the head of the table and looked at each of them in turn. Good morning, I said.
I'm Marianne Blakewood.
I'm your new owner, and I have some ideas I'd like to share with you. I spent the next 3 hours going over every department, every process, every complaint that had been filed in the last year. I asked questions. I made suggestions. I listened to their concerns. By the end of the meeting, I had a clear picture of what was working and what wasn't, and a plan for moving forward. The security proposal was approved immediately. I signed off on the contract without even looking at the price tag. The vendors who'd been overcharging for shoddy supplies were informed that their contracts wouldn't be renewed. The department heads who'd been coasting on autopilot were given clear performance targets and 3 months to meet them. I was firm but fair. I was demanding but supportive. I was everything Harry had taught me to be, all those years ago when we'd built our business from the ground up. I was in my element. After the meeting, Dennis pulled me aside. You're good at this, he said. I always knew you were smart, but I didn't know you could do this. You're a natural. I've been doing it for a long time, I said. I just didn't talk about it. Well, you're talking about it now, he said. And it's pretty impressive. I smiled. It felt good to be seen. It felt good to be respected. For too long, I'd let myself fade into the background, convinced that my quiet life was the only life worth living. But now I knew that there was a middle ground. I could be wealthy and still be humble. I could be powerful and still be kind. I could be seen without losing myself. I walked out of the conference room with my ring sparkling on my finger and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The hotel was mine. The people were mine. And for the first time in a very long time, I was truly and completely myself. That the weeks that followed were a blur of activity, the kind of busy that kept my mind sharp and my body moving in ways I hadn't experienced since Harry was alive. I woke up every morning with a list of things to do, people to see, decisions to make. And I loved every minute of it. There was something deeply satisfying about taking a business that had been running on autopilot and shaking it up, making it better, making it mine. I started with the little things. New uniforms for the staff, better quality fabric that didn't itch and actually fit properly. New soap in the guest rooms, the good kind that smelled like lavender and didn't leave your skin feeling dry. New coffee in the lobby, fresh roasted from a local shop instead of the stale, bitter stuff they'd been serving for years. Small changes, but the staff noticed. The guests noticed. The whole atmosphere of the place shifted almost overnight. Then I moved on to the bigger things. I hired a new head of security, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd spent 20 years in law enforcement and didn't take any guff from anyone. I installed a state-of-the-art surveillance system that covered every inch of the public areas, with clear signage letting guests know they were being recorded. I wanted people to feel safe, but I also wanted them to know that theft wouldn't be tolerated. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. I also implemented a new training program for all housekeeping staff. It wasn't just about how to make a bed or clean a bathroom. It was about respect. It was about understanding that the people whose rooms you cleaned were human beings with feelings and histories and belongings that mattered. I personally led the first few sessions, telling my own story, sharing what it had felt like to wake up and find my ring gone. I didn't lecture. I just talked. And I watched their faces as they realized that the old woman in front of them wasn't just their boss. She was someone who'd been hurt and had decided to do something about it. Maria's name didn't come up. I didn't need to mention her. The story spoke for itself. The local news interview happened on a sunny Tuesday morning. I'd agreed to do it mostly because Dennis had been bugging me about it for weeks, but also because I thought it was time. Time to step out of the shadows. Time to let people know who I really was. The reporter was a young woman named Chloe, bright-eyed and eager, with a microphone that she kept pointing at me like I was a celebrity. She asked me about the hotel, about my plans for it, about my background. I told her the story, the whole story from the beginning. The business Harry and I had built, the decision to keep our wealth secret, the theft of my ring, the purchase of the hotel, the firing of Maria. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I didn't play the victim. I just told the truth. Chloe's eyes got wider and wider as I spoke. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a low whistle. "Mrs. Blakewood," she said, "that's one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. You're like a movie character. The secret millionaire who comes out of retirement to take revenge on the people who wronged her." "I wasn't taking revenge," I said. "I was taking back what was mine. There's a difference." "Still," she said, "the way you handled it. Buying the whole hotel just to fire one housekeeper. That's something else." "I didn't buy the hotel to fire her," I said. "I bought the hotel because I wanted to make a point. I wanted people to know that you don't mess with old women. We're not invisible. We're not harmless. We've just been waiting for the right moment to show you what we're made of." The interview aired that evening, and the response was immediate. My phone started ringing off the hook. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years called to congratulate me. People I'd never met sent emails praising my courage. The hotel's reservations tripled within a week, as people from all over the city wanted to stay at the place owned by the grandma who bought a hotel. I found it all a little overwhelming, but I wasn't complaining. For the first time in decades, I felt like I was part of the world again. Not just a spectator. watching life pass me by, but an active participant, making things happen, leaving my mark. The person who surprised me the most was Dennis. He'd always been a bit dismissive of me, a bit condescending, the kind of son-in-law who thought he knew better than everyone else. But the whole experience had changed him. He was more respectful now, more attentive. He called me Mrs. Blakewood instead of Marion, and he did it with genuine admiration. He'd even started coming to the hotel on his days off, just to hang out in the lobby and chat with the staff. He told me he was learning from me. He told me I was an inspiration. That meant more to me than he probably realized. For years, I'd felt like a burden to my family, an obligation they had to fulfill out of guilt. Now, I was something else entirely. I was a source of pride, a role model. It was a strange feeling, but I liked it. Judy took a little longer to come around. She was still processing the whole thing, still trying to reconcile the mother she'd known with the woman I'd turned out to be. But we were talking more now, really talking, not just the surface-level conversations we'd had before. She asked me questions about my past, about the business, about Harry. I answered them all honestly, even the hard ones. I was done keeping secrets. One evening, she came to visit me at the hotel. We had dinner in the restaurant, the same one where I'd sat alone and struggled with my wine a few weeks earlier. This time it felt different, lighter. We laughed about old times. We talked about the future. She told me she was proud of me, and I told her I was proud of her too. "Mom," she said, putting down her fork, "I have a question, and I want you to be totally honest with me." "Always," I said. "All that money you have, all those years you kept it a secret, was it really just about not wanting to change? Or was there something else? Were you scared?" I thought about it. She deserved the truth. Even if it wasn't a pretty one, I was scared. I admitted. I was scared of what people would think. I was scared of being judged. I was scared that if people knew I had money, they'd only want me for it. They'd stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as a bank account. I'd seen it happen to other people. Rich people who couldn't trust anyone because everyone wanted a piece of them.
I didn't want that.
I wanted real relationships, real connections. So I hid. Judy reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom, I get it. I really do. But you have to understand something. The people who love you, the people who really love you, they're not going to stop loving you just because you have money. If anything, they're going to love you more for being brave enough to be honest." "That's what I'm learning," I said. "It's just taken me a long time to figure it out." We finished dinner and walked through the lobby together. The staff greeted us with smiles and respectful nods. The guests looked at us with curiosity, probably wondering who the two women were who seemed to own the place. I didn't mind the attention. It felt good to be seen. As we reached the elevator, I caught a glimpse of someone familiar out of the corner of my eye. A woman in a red coat, walking quickly toward the exit. She had her head down, her face hidden, but I recognized her anyway. Maria. I froze. "So did Judy. Mom," she said. "Is that—" "Yes," I said. "It's her." Maria reached the door and pushed it open, stepping out into the night. She didn't look back. She didn't slow down. She just walked away, disappearing into the darkness like a ghost. I stood there for a long moment, watching the door swing shut behind her. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, still, for what she'd done, but also something else. Something that might have been pity. She'd thrown away a good job for a moment of greed. She'd lost her reputation, her stability, her peace of mind. And for what? A ring she couldn't even sell because she'd gotten attached to it. "Are you okay?" Judy asked, squeezing my hand. "I'm fine," I said.
"She's gone."
That's all that matters. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Not really. Maria had taken something from me, and she'd paid the price. But there was still something unfinished about the whole thing. Some thread that hadn't been tied off. That night, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the city lights. The ring was on my finger, cool and familiar. I twisted it, the way I always did when I was thinking. The mechanism inside clicked softly, a tiny sound that only I could hear. I'd gotten it back. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd gotten my hotel. But something was still nagging at me. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Then it hit me. I'd never actually used the ring. I'd never accessed the offshore account. I'd been so busy taking care of everything else that I'd forgotten the whole reason the ring mattered in the first place. I pulled out my laptop and logged in, the same way I'd done on that first morning. The verification box appeared, blinking patiently. I took off my ring, twisted the tiny mechanism until the engraving lined up with the marker, and read off the 6-digit code. I typed it into the box and hit enter. The screen changed. A balance appeared. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest. It was more than I'd expected. Much more. The money had been growing all these years, compounding, multiplying, turning into something I could barely comprehend. I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. I had more money than I'd ever need, more than I'd ever spend. And I'd almost lost access to it because someone had stolen a ring. That was when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let that happen again. I was going to set up a proper system, a secure one with redundancies and backups and people who knew what to do if something went wrong.
I was going to be smart about this.
I was going to make sure that no one could ever take anything from me again. The next morning, I called Charles. I need you to help me set up a new system, I said. A way to access the account that doesn't depend on a single piece of jewelry. I want backups. I want fail-safes. I want to be able to get to my money no matter what. Charles didn't ask questions. He just said, I'll get right on it. I hung up and looked at my ring. It was still beautiful, still precious, still Harry's last gift to me. But it wasn't my only key anymore. I was done being vulnerable. I was done being at the mercy of anyone else. I was in control now, and I was going to stay that way. The hotel was humming with activity. Guests were checking in, staff were bustling about. The whole place felt alive and vibrant. I walked through the lobby, nodding to people, smiling at the little moments of kindness and connection that made the job worthwhile. A young couple checking in for their honeymoon. A businessman who'd been upgraded to a suite because I'd noticed he'd had a rough week. A family with 3 kids who were thrilled to find free cookies at the front desk. This was what it was all about. Not the money, not the power, the people. The feeling of making a difference, of being part of something bigger than yourself. I stopped in front of the front desk and looked at the young woman behind it. She was new, one of the recent hires, and she was looking at me with wide, nervous eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Blakewood," she said. "Can I help you with something?" I smiled. "No, thank you, dear. I just wanted to say that you're doing a great job. I appreciate you." Her face lit up. "Thank you, Mrs. Blakewood. That means a lot." I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. The ring was on my finger, the hotel was mine, my family was back in my life, and for the first time in a very long time, everything felt right. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew I was ready for it. I'd been hiding for too long. Now I was ready to live out loud.